It's a messy day today, Jesus Christ. Okay, right. Bad hair days, we all have them. What's up, guys? My name is Ricardo Neiva, otherwise known as Cine, and today I'm going to give you my top 10 tips for editing better using Lightroom CC. Let's hit the intro, y'all. La da 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 da. Cool, guys, so editing your photos is what takes your photos from being awesome to spectacular, from being just a plain old photograph all the way to a work of art. So with that being said, I thought it'd be super dope to jump into my top 10 tips for editing better photos using Lightroom CC. So with that, let's jump to tip numero uno. Tip numero uno, which is make sure that your computer's brightness is set to the middle point. The reason why is if it's too dark, you're gonna be bumping up all your exposure values in order to try and see your image clearly and bring back that highlight information that your computer's screen dimness is hiding from you and deceiving you. And if it's too bright, the opposite will happen where you're gonna be trying to crank it down because it's too bright. So as you can see on my screen, right here, right in the middle point, is a le sweet goodness. So yes, now jumping on to tip number 2. Cool, tip number 2 is the before and after key. Now, there's 2 ways you can check your before and afters in Lightroom CC, and it's super important that you know how to use this because you wanna make sure that you're always checking on what you've done. Is it looking better? Is it not looking better? Do I prefer the original? What's the edit looking? All of that jazz. And the way you do that is by hitting the // key, as you can see on my screen, //, or if you look at my mouse, I am clicking this button over here, and that is showing me my original. Those are the 2 ways to see your before and afters, and it's super important so you can see what progress you're making on your edit and you're not over post-processing. So use that before and after. Tip number 3. Cool, tip number 3 is selective adjustments. Now, selective adjustments are your brush tool, your linear gradient tool, and your radial gradient tool. Now, these tools are super important. And the reason why is because they help us create focus in the image. They help us edit specific parts in the image. They can help us add depth to the image. They're just a super tool to have. And to know which ones to use at which time will just help you become an even better photographer because you will then, in post-processing, help solidify that composition and make it look even better and add more depth and dynamicism to the photo. So where can you find these tools, you may ask? You can find them over here on the right side of the tab. It's the brush tool, the linear gradient tool, and the radial gradient tool. Or you can use the shortcuts B for brush, L for linear, R for radial, B, L, R. And you'll be able to access them. Now, let's look at an example of where I use the linear gradient to help add depth. So if I quickly go over here and I just delete that, instantly the image looks boring, it's washed out, it's all way too bright. There's nothing that really makes me want to look at this image. But if I add that radial gradient that I added beforehand, instantly the image has depth, it goes from dark to light, and that path where it goes from dark to light helps draw the audience's attention because it's that beautiful linear movement. So yeah, that's linear gradient. Now, while we're here, we're gonna jump to tip number 4, which is the mask overlay on and off shortcut. Now, while you're adding your radials, your linears, and your brushes onto your image and making it look fantastic, obviously you wanna know what you're drawing on. Now, there's one way you can do it. For example, if I go into my brush tool over here and I just crank up the exposure, I can see what I'm affecting on this image because obviously it's horrendously horrendous. But if we want to be more subtle about this, what we can do is press O and we'll be able to draw in and we'll see this red line, and that is where our image is being affected on. So this is super important so that you can see what you're doing to your image and what part you're affecting and what your brush or your linear gradient or your radial gradient is doing. Now, once we're done with that, we can just press O again and it will hide it, and then we can start influencing the image and not having to go through this horrendous process of going super blown up and then being like, okay, cool, now I'm gonna turn it down because I know what I've drawn. Yeah, so use your mask overlay on and off to see what you're affecting in your image. Cool, with that being said, it's time for tip number 5. Cool, so tip number 5 is your eraser tool. Now this is a super important tool, especially when you're doing selective adjustments. So for example, let's say we're brushing the rock, and oh, we went into the sky. Oh no, Cine Rick, what am I gonna do? My hard work of masking and trying to brush this in so perfectly is gone. What do I do, Cine Rick? Well, have no fear. Adobe's got you, because all you gotta do is go over here next to the brush tool that you've been using, click that eraser button over there, and then you can erase all that bad masking and really refine your image. Now, let's look at this other image over here. Now, looking at this image, we can see that I've thrown a linear gradient over here. Now, accessing my mask overlay tool, I can see that it's affecting the subject. Now, the reason why I've done it is obviously to darken out the skies, make the image pop a little bit more, and just add a whole lot more dynamicism and depth to this image. But the problem is that by doing so, I've made the subject's skin look blue, green, multi, very zombie-like, which is not really the idea. So what we're gonna do to fix this is very simple. All we're gonna do is open up our mask overlay again so that we can see what are the images being affected. We're gonna use our eraser tool again, and then we're just gonna erase around the subject. Instantaneously, the image, the skin is better. So with a little bit more refinement, you can get this as an effect. All because we use the selective adjustment with an eraser tool to refine the image. Scoliosis like scoliosis. Tip number 6. Tip number 6 is straightening your images. Now, in Lightroom CC, there is this awesome built-in straightener that will do a fantastic job. All you gotta do is go into your crop tab by pressing C as a shortcut, or just clicking the crop tab, and then right underneath the aspect ratio of crop there is straighten. Click the auto. It should do it. Usually 95% of the time it does a fantastic, perfect job, but sometimes you might just need to tweak it, and you can just use your sliders to tweak it to get a more accurate tweak, or you can drag over until the arrows become a circular with 2 arrowheads to tweak the straightening. But let's look at what the auto level does. So if we look at it before the straighten and after the straighten, that little straighten makes the image feel a lot more professional, a lot more clean, and Gucci bags of photography. Yeah. Cool, tip number 7 is your color mixer tab. Now this is a super important tool that helps you affect the colors of your image, and it's a super important tool to help remove distracting colors from your image or bump up beautiful colors in your image and just help create a cohesive image. Now, the way this works is that you can affect the hue, the saturation, and the luminance values of the specific colors that you see there. That's the red, orange, yellow, cyan, aqua, green, magenta, and pink, if I'm correct. I just looked at it, I am correct. Cool, now like most tools in Lightroom CC, you affect the hue, saturation, and luminance of specific colors by clicking on the color and then dragging the specific sliders left or right, and it will affect the image accordingly. Now, if you don't know what color you're looking to try and affect, there's this awesome tool that allows you to specifically pick the colors within that range of where you drag your picker to. And the way you access that is by going to the right of that tab. There's this little cross-eyed crosshairs. It's crosshairs. Now, once you click that button, you'll see a little menu at the bottom of your image pops up, which has the curves, because you can also use this tool to affect specific points in your curves. But it also has this little color wheel, which is where we're at right now, which is the color mixer tool. And then it has hue, saturation, and luminance. So once I pick hue, I click. As you can see, it already tells me that within this, I'm affecting the blue channel, and I can just drag it in and out, and I affect the hue of the image. And then I can do the same thing for saturation. And I can do this for luminance and create a horror piece of purple sky. But yeah, that is the HSL tab, and specifically the crosshair that allows you to get a more specific pick on your image if you don't know what color you're looking to try and influence within your image. With that being said, tip number 8. Cool, tip number 8 is the healing brush tool. Specifically, how to get a straight line out of your healing brush tool and your brush tool, because this also works there. But we're looking at it specifically in the healing brush tool. This can be useful for many reasons. But now looking at this image specifically, I obviously have this red line that's dividing the two pieces of paper that I stuck on the wall that you can see, which is very distracting and then doesn't add to the effect of this being a red wall with just a yellow block breaking it. So what I can do is obviously I can do this where I just drew a line down, or I can hold shift, click, and then that's my start point, and then I click again and I will have drawn a straight line. So looking at that, straight line compared to that, squiggly line. See how that's useful? All right, yeah. Comes in handy, especially if you're trying to remove telephone wires. You can also do this with the brush tool. So if I go into the brush tool and I do that, I can do the exact same thing. Don't know why you need it, but you can do it. Just press shift and then click your start point and your end point. And when you're done, release shift, it will do the mathematics for you and you have a straight line. With that being said, let's jump into tip number 9. Tip number 9 is versions. Now this is basically like creating a virtual copy. Now the reason why this is important, for example, on this YouTube video, I've created a version so that I can show you a edit and how it's done, but still preserve the original photograph and the way I edited the first time clearly. Now this can be super useful, especially if you're doing various versions for clients, or if you just want to practice your edit and keep creating versions that you can look back to. So if I click on VT, I will instantly go back. That little yellow squiggly puff right at the back of the head is gone, and we have back to my original image. That's versions. It's like virtual copies. It's super useful, especially if you want to be creating multiple versions. All you got to do is just click versions over there, create a version, and then you're good. Cool, tip number 10 is the Learn tab. Now the Learn tab is a super useful tool, especially as a creative, because we're always trying to learn more tools, add more things to our bag of goodies that we can use to edit photos and create even more photos. And the Learn tab is the best way to do that, because anyone can post a tutorial up that shows people how to edit like they do, and Adobe itself has put up courses to help you learn the software even better. So over here, creating drama with dehaze, creating neon light portraits, all of these add various tools that can help improve your photo editing skills. And I think it's an awesome thing to know about Lightroom is that it's got this built-in tutorial database that you can keep learning from. Cool, now if you made it this far to the end of this video, you deserve a round of applause. And a bonus tip. Now the bonus tip is cropping for Instagram. Now, when you're cropping for Instagram, you obviously want to have the most real estate on that Instagram page so that you can get the most engagement. Now, the way you do that is by going into the crop tool and cropping for 4x5 or 5x4. That will give you the most efficient space on the Instagram feed. So use your 4x5. I always crop my portraits 4x5. Now, if you're doing landscapes, on the other hand, don't worry, we're doing another video where we break down how to maximize your landscapes for Instagram. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you can be updated when that video comes out. But that's the end of this video where we discuss the top 10 tips to edit better using Lightroom CC. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. You know, do all that funky, funny stuff. Remember to subscribe to the channel to keep posted on all that Cine Rick goodness. And remember, if you want to be part of the Cine Rick community on the broader sense, follow us on all our major social medias. They've been popping in and out. Anyway, I hope you have a fantastic day. I love your faces. Goodbye.